2-9 He is patient and long-suffering, with salvation in view for obedient ones. 2p3. 8-10 Yet he will not tolerate forever a situation that brings reproach upon his lofty name. PS 74. 10, 22, 23. Issa 65. 6, 7. 2pe2. 3 He shows compassion and is understanding regarding human frailties, forgiving repentant ones in a large way. PS 103. 10-14. 130. 3, 4. Issa 55. 6, 7. Yet he does not excuse persons from the responsibilities they rightly bear for their own actions and the effects these have on themselves and their families. They reap what they have sown. 30. 19, 20. 6. 5, 7, 8 Thus, Jehovah shows a beautiful and perfect balance of justice and mercy. Those having the proper perspective of matters as revealed in his word. Issa 55. 8, 9. As 18. 25, 29-31 Will not commit the grave error of trifling with his undeserved kindness or missing its purpose. 2 6. 1. Heb 10. 26-31. 12. 29. Unchanging in qualities and standards. As Jehovah told the people of Israel, I am Jehovah. I have not changed. Mal 3. 6 This was some 3,500 years after God's creation of mankind, and some 1,500 years from the time of God's making the Abrahamic covenant. While some claim that the God revealed in the Hebrew scriptures differs from the God revealed by Jesus Christ and by the writers of the Christian Greek scriptures, examination shows this claim to be without any foundation. Of God, the disciple James rightly said, with him there is not a variation of the turning of the shadow. Ches 1. 17 There was no mellowing of Jehovah God's personality during the centuries, for no mellowing was needed. His severity as revealed in the Christian Greek scriptures is no less nor his love any greater than it was at the beginning of his dealings with mankind in Eden. The seeming differences in personality are in reality merely different aspects of the same unchanging personality. These result from the differing circumstances and persons dealt with, calling for different attitudes or relationships. Compare Issa 59. 1-4. It was not Jehovah, but Adam and Eve, who changed. They put themselves in a position where Jehovah's unchangeable righteous standards allowed no further dealings with them as members of his beloved universal family. Being perfect, they were fully responsible for their deliberate wrongdoing. Row 5. 14 And hence beyond the limits of divine mercy, although Jehovah showed them undeserved kindness in starting them out with clothing and allowing them to live for centuries outside the sanctuary of Eden and bring forth offspring before they finally died from the effects of their own sinful course. GE 3. 8-24 After their eviction from Eden, all divine communication with Adam and his wife apparently ceased. Why he can deal with imperfect humans. Jehovah's just standards allowed for his dealing differently with Adam and Eve's offspring than with their parents. Why? For the reason that Adam's offspring inherited sin, hence involuntarily started life as imperfect creatures with a built-in inclination toward wrongdoing. PS 51. 5. Row 5. 12 Thus, there was basis for mercy toward them. Jehovah's first prophecy GE 3. 15, spoken at the time of pronouncing judgment in Eden, showed that the rebellion of his first human children as well as that of one of his spirit sons had not embittered Jehovah nor dried up the flow of his love. That prophecy pointed in symbolic terms toward a righting of the situation produced by the rebellion and a restoration of conditions to their original perfection, the full significance being revealed millenniums later. Compare the symbolisms of the serpent, the woman, and the seed at 12. 9, 17. 3. 16, 29. 4. 26, 27. Adam's descendants have been permitted to continue textui acute miritra longo. Jehovah 19 certain of fulfillment. Jehovah calls the things that are not as though they were, as in naming Abram Abraham, meaning father of a crowd multitude, while he and Sarah were yet childless. Row 4. 17 Knowing that in his due time for he would provide a ransom, the legal means for forgiving sin and removing imperfection. ISLA 53. 11, 12. Mount 20. 28. 1 PE 2. 24. Jehovah consistently could deal with and have in his service imperfect men, inheritors of sin. It was because he had a just basis for counting, or reckoning, them as righteous persons, because of their faith in Jehovah's promises and, eventually, in the fulfillment of those promises in Christ Jesus as the perfect sacrifice for sins. Just 2. 23. Row 4. 20-25. Thus, Jehovah's provision of the ransom arrangement and its benefits gives striking testimony not only of Jehovah's love and mercy, but also of his fidelity to his exalted standards of justice, for by the ransom arrangement he exhibits his own righteousness in this present season, that he might be righteous even when declaring righteous the man, though imperfect, that has faith in Jesus. Row 3. 21-26. Compare ISLA 42. 21. See declare righteous. Why the God of peace fights. Jehovah's statement in Eden that he would put enmity between the seed of his adversary and the seed of the woman did not change him from being the God of peace. GE 3. 15. Row 16. 20. 1 Co 14. 33. The situation then was the same as in the days of the earthly life of his Son, Jesus Christ, who said, "Do not think I came to put peace upon the earth. I came to put, not peace, but a sword." Mount 10. 32-40. Jesus' ministry brought divisions, even within families. Luke 12. 51-53, but it was because of his adherence to, and proclamation of, God's righteous standards and truth. Division resulted because many individuals hardened their hearts against these truths, while others accepted them. Joe 8. 40, 44-47. 15. 22-25. 17. 14. This was unavoidable if the divine principles were to be upheld. But the blame lay with the rejectors of what was right. So, too, enmity was foretold to come because Jehovah's perfect standards would allow for no condoning of the rebellious course of Satan's seed. God's disapproval of such ones and his blessing of those holding to a righteous course would have a divisive effect. Job 15. 18-21. Just 4. 4, even as in the case of Cain and Abel. GE 4. 2-8. Heb 11. 4. 1 Joe 3. 12. Jude 10, 11. See Cain. The rebellious course chosen by men and wicked angels constituted a challenge to Jehovah's rightful sovereignty and to the good order of all the universe. Standing up to this challenge has required Jehovah to become a manly person of war. Acts 15. 3-7, defending his own good name and righteous standards, fighting on behalf of those who love and serve him, and executing judgment upon those meriting destruction. 1-17. 45. 2 Ch 14. 11. Is 30. 27-31. 42. 13. He does not hesitate to use his almighty power, devastatingly at times, as at the flood, in the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and in the delivery of Israel from Egypt. 7. 9, 10. And he has no fear of making known any of the details of his righteous warfare. He makes no apologies, having nothing for which to be ashamed. Job 34. 10-15. 36. 22-24. 37. 23, 24. 40. 1-8. Row 3. For his respect for his own name and the righteousness it represents, as well as his love for those who love him, compels him to act. Isla 48. 11. 57. 21. 59. 15-19. Re 16. 5-7. The Christian Greek scriptures portray the same picture. The Apostle Paul encouraged fellow Christians, saying, "The God who gives peace will crush Satan under your feet shortly." Row 16. 20. Compare GE 3. 15. He also showed the rightness of God's repaying tribulation to those causing tribulation for his servants, bringing everlasting destruction upon such opposers. 2th 6-9 It was in harmony with the teachings of God's Son, who left no room for doubt as to his Father's O textoi acute miritra longo. Jehovah himself is there 20. Yet it would be a grave error to miss the upbuilding and comforting insight into Jehovah God's personality that his dealings with fleshly Israel provide. These give sterling examples proving that Jehovah is the kind of person he described himself to Moses as being. Jehovah, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger and abundant in loving kindness and truth, preserving loving kindness for thousands, pardoning error and transgression and sin, but by no means will he give exemption from punishment, bringing punishment for the error of fathers upon sons and upon grandsons, upon the third generation and upon the fourth generation. X34 4-7. Compare X20 5. Though balanced by justice, it is in reality Jehovah's love, patience, and long-suffering that are the outstanding facets of his personality as revealed in the history of Israel, a highly favored people who, in their majority, proved remarkably stiff-necked and hard-hearted toward their Creator. X34 8, 9. NE 9. 16, 17. J 7. 21-26. S3. 7. The strong denunciations and condemnation repeatedly leveled against Israel by Jehovah through his prophets only serve to emphasize the greatness of his mercy and the amazing extent of his long-suffering. At the end of over 1,500 years of bearing with them, and even after his own son was slain at the instigation of religious leaders of the nation, Jehovah continued to favor them for a period of 3.5 more years, mercifully causing the preaching of the good news to be restricted to them, granting them yet further opportunity to gain the privilege of reigning with his son. An opportunity that repentant thousands accepted. Act 2. 1-5, 14-41. 10. 24-28, 34-48. C. 70 weeks. Jesus Christ evidently referred to Jehovah's previously quoted statement as to bringing punishment to later descendants of offenders when he said to the hypocritical scribes and Pharisees, "You say, if we were in the days of our forefathers, we would not be sharers with them in the blood of the prophets. Therefore you are bearing witness against yourselves that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets. Well, then, fill up the measure of your forefathers." Mount 23. 29-32 Despite their pretensions, by their course of action such ones demonstrated their approval of the wrong deeds of their forefathers and proved that they themselves continued to be among those hating Jehovah. X20 5. Mount 23. 33-36. Job 15. 23, 24 Thus, they, unlike the Jews who repented and heeded the words of God's Son, suffered the cumulative effect of God's judgment when, years later, Jerusalem was besieged and destroyed and most of its population died. They could have escaped but chose not to avail themselves of Jehovah's mercy. Lu 21. 20-24. Compare Dar 9. 10, 13-15. His personality reflected in his Son. In every respect Jesus Christ was a faithful reflection of the beautiful personality of his Father, Jehovah God, in whose name he came. Job 1. 18. Mount 21. 9. Job 12. 12, 13. Compare PS 118. 26. Jesus said, "The Son cannot do a single thing of his own initiative, but only what he beholds the Father doing. For whatever things that one does, these things the Son also does in like manner." Job 5. 19 It follows, therefore, that the kindness and compassion, the mildness and warmth, as well as the strong love for righteousness and hatred of wickedness that Jesus displayed had 1. 8, 9, are all qualities that the Son had observed in his Father, Jehovah God. Compare Mount 9. 35, 36 with PS 23. 1-6 and Issa 40. 10, 11. Mount 11. 27-30 with Issa 40. 28-31 and Issa 57. 15, 16. Lu 15. 11-24 with PS 103. 8-14. Lu 19. 41-44 with S 18. 31, 32. S 33. 11. Every lover of righteousness who reads the inspired scriptures and who truly comes to know with understanding the full meaning of Jehovah's name PS 9. 9, 10. 91. 14. J 16. 21 has every reason, therefore, to love and bless that name PSO text to acute miritra longo. Jehovah of armies 21. Jehovah is our righteousness. The expression translated from the two words you outside middle. Que new, found at Jeremiah 23. 6 and 33. 16. Jeremiah 23. 5, 6 is a messianic prophecy describing the future king sprouting from David's line to execute justice and righteousness in the land. Since he rules as God's representative even as David, and others, sat upon Jehovah's throne as God's anointed king. 1 Ch 29. 23, the prophecy says, "This is his name with which he will be called, Jehovah is our righteousness." There is no basis for claiming, as some have, that this means that Jesus, the Messiah, and Jehovah are the same, forming one God. This can be seen from the fact that the similar messianic prophecy at Jeremiah 33. 14-16 applies the identical expression to Jerusalem, saying, "And this is what you will be called, Jehovah is our righteousness." In both cases the expression shows that God's name, Jehovah, placed both upon his promised king and upon his chosen capital, is a guarantee of their righteousness. Moreover, the justice and righteousness emanating from or expressed by these sources are the product of full devotion to Jehovah and his divine will, bringing Jehovah's blessing and direction. Jehovah Jireh middle. Jehovah Jireh Jehovah will see to it. Jehovah will provide. A place on one of the mountains in the land of Moriah where Abraham found a ram caught in a thicket and subsequently offered it instead of Isaac. Abraham viewed this ram as Jehovah's provision and therefore named the place Jehovah Jireh. Ancient tradition links this location with the site of Solomon's temple. GE 22. 2, 13, 14. See Moriah. Jehovah Nissi G middle. Jehovah Nissi. The name of the memorial altar erected by Moses after Israel's successful battle against the Amalekites at Rephidim. X 17. 8, 13-16. The name means Jehovah is my signal pole, deriving this middle. C from their signal pole. The Greek Septuagint translators understood this middle. C to be derived from thus flee for refuge, thus giving it the meaning Jehovah is my refuge, while in the Latin Vulgate it was thought to be derived from Nasus hoist. Lift up, thus giving it the meaning Jehovah is my exaltation. X 17. 15, FTN. Jehovah of armies. This expression, found 285 times, with variations, in the scriptures, translates the Hebrew middle. Watsiva middle. Oath. The prophetic books, particularly Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Zechariah, contain by far the majority of its occurrences. Paul and James, quoting from or alluding to the prophecies, used its equivalent transliterated into Greek in their writings. Row 9. 29. Just 5. 4. Compare Issa 1. 9. The Hebrew words a middle. Va singular. Plural, Siva middle. Oath basically means a literal army of soldiers, or combat forces, as at Genesis 21. 22. Deuteronomy 20. 9, and many other texts. However, the term is also used in a figurative sense as in the heavens and the earth and all their army, or the sun and the moon and the stars, or the army of the heavens. GE 2. 1. De 4. 19. The plural form Tsiva middle. Oath is employed a number of times as applying to the Israelite forces, as at Exodus 6. 26. 7. 4. Numbers 33. 1. Psalms 44. 9. 60. 10. Some scholars believe that the armies in the expression Jehovah of armies include not only the angelic forces, but also the Israelite army and the inanimate heavenly bodies. However, it appears that the armies signified are primarily, if not exclusively, the angelic forces. When Joshua saw an angelic visitor near Jericho and asked him if he was for Israel or for the enemy side, the reply was, "No, but as Prince of the army of Jehovah I have now come." Jos 5. 13-15 The prophet Micaiah told Kings Ahab and Jehoshaphat, "I certainly see Jehovah sitting upon his throne and all the army of the heavens standing by him, to his right and to his left," clearly referring to Jehovah's spirit sons. 1 Kai 22. 19-21 The use of the plural form in Jehovah of armies o textoi acute miritra longo, Jehovah's Day 22 unaided by any earthly military force, challenged the formidable Philistine Goliath in the name of Jehovah of armies, the God of the battle lines of Israel. 1 17. 45 Not only in times of literal battle, but also in all other trialsome situations or occasions of importance God's people as a whole and as individuals could take courage and hope from recognizing the majesty of Jehovah's sovereign position, reflected in his control over the mighty forces serving from his heavenly courts. 1 1. 9-11. 2 6. 18. 7. 25-29 The use of the expression Jehovah of armies by the prophets supplied yet one more reason for those hearing the prophecies to be certain of their fulfillment. Jehovah's Day. See Day of Jehovah. Jehovah Shalom Jehovah Shalom Jehovah is peace. The name given to the altar that Gideon built at Ophrah of the Jordan. After having seen Jehovah's angel, Gideon feared that he would die. But he was assured, "Peace be yours. Do not fear. You will not die." Out of gratitude, Gideon built the altar, evidently not for sacrifice, but as a memorial to Jehovah. JG 6. 22-24. Jehozabad Bad probably, Jehovah has endowed. 1. The second of Obed-Edom's 8 sons included among the sanctuary gatekeepers. 1 Ch 26. 1, 4. 5, 13, 15. 2. A Benjamite officer over 180,000 in King Jehoshaphat's army. 2 Ch 17. 17, 18. 3. An accomplice in the slaying of King Jehoash of Judah. Jehozabad and Josachar, servants of Jehoash, put the king to death because he had murdered Jehoiada's son Zechariah. They themselves were killed by Jehoash's son and successor, Amaziah. Jehozabad was the son of a Moabitess named Shimrath and of Shomer. 2 Kai 12. 20, 21. 2 Ch 24. 20-22, 25-27. 25. 1, 3. Jehozadak probably, Jehovah pronounces righteous, Jozadak shortened form of Jehozadak. The shorter form is used in Nehemiah, the longer form elsewhere. Father of High Priest Jeshua Joshua. S 3. 2. Hag 1. 12. Zech 6. 11 Jehozadak was taken into exile after Nebuchadnezzar killed his father, the chief priest Sariah, and thus through him the high priestly line was preserved. 1 Ch 6. 14, 15. 2 Kai 25. 18-21. Ne 12. 26. Jehu possibly, Jehovah is he. 1. A Benjamite of the city of Anathoth who came as a volunteer to serve with David. David was then at Ziklag as a refugee from King Saul. Jehu was among the mighty men armed with the bow, using the right hand and using the left hand with stones or with arrows in the bow. 1 Ch 12. 1-3. 2. A prophet, the son of Hanani. He foretold the destruction of the house of Baasha, king of Israel. 1 Kai 16. 1-4, 7, 12 More than 33 years later, a prophet by the same name and hence, perhaps the same person reproved King Jehoshaphat of Judah for his friendship with and assistance to wicked King Ahab of Israel. 2 Ch 19. 1-3 or 2 Chronicles 20. 34 Jehoshaphat's history is said to be written among the words of Jehu the son of Hanani, which were inserted in the book of the kings of Israel. 3. The son of Jehoshaphat not King Jehoshaphat of Judah and grandson of Nimshi. 2 Kai 9. 14 Jehu ruled as king of Israel from about 904 to 877 BCE. During the reign of King Ahab of Israel, Elijah the prophet had fled to Mount Horeb to escape death at the hands of Ahab's wife Jezebel. God commanded Elijah to go back and to anoint 3 men. Elisha as Elijah's successor, Hazael as king of Syria, and Jehu as king of Israel. 1 Kings 19. 15, 16 Elijah anointed Elisha or appointed him. See anointed, anointing. However, the anointing of Jehu remained for Elijah's successor Elisha actually to perform. Was this leaving of Jehu's anointing to Elisha due to procrastination on Elijah's part? No. A while after giving Elijah the command, Jehovah told him that the calamity on Ahab's house to be executed by Jehu would not come in Ahab's day, but in the days of Ahab's son. 1 Kings 21. 27-29 So it is evident that the delay was by Jehovah's guidance. O text to acute miritra longo. Jehu 23 As Israel's military force kept guard at Ramoth Gilead, King Jehoram of Israel was at Jezreel recovering from wounds he had received at the hands of the Syrians at Ramoth Gilead. The king of Judah, Ahijah, was also there. He was a nephew of Jehoram of Israel, for his mother was Athaliah the sister of Jehoram of Israel and the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel. King Ahijah had come to Jezreel on a visit to his sick uncle, Jehoram. 2 Kings 8. 25, 26, 28, 29. Jehu's anointing. Elisha called one of the sons of the prophets, his attendant, telling him to take a flask of oil, go to the Israelite camp at Ramoth Gilead, there anoint Jehu, and flee. Elisha's attendant obeyed, calling Jehu away from the other officers into a house, where he anointed him and stated Jehu's commission to destroy the entire house of Ahab. Then the attendant fled, as Elisha had directed. 2 Kings 9. 1-10. On coming out of the house, Jehu tried to pass off the matter lightly, as though the prophet had said nothing of importance. But the men saw from his appearance and manner that something of significance had occurred. On being pressed, Jehu revealed that he has been anointed as king of Israel. On hearing this pronouncement, the army immediately proclaimed him king. 2 Kings 9. 11-14. Destruction of the house of Ahab. Giving orders to keep the matter secret from Jezreel, Jehu rode furiously toward that city. 2 Kings 9. 15, 16 Messengers sent out from Jezreel by Jehoram to inquire is there peace, were sent to the rear of Jehu's men. As the heaving mass of Jehu's horsemen and chariots came closer, the chariot driving of Jehu with madness identified him to the watchman on the tower. Jehoram the king of Israel and son of Ahab became suspicious and rode out in his war chariot, reaching Jehu at Naboth's tract of land. Jehu shot him with an arrow and, recalling the prophecy of Elijah, commanded his adjutant Pekah to throw his body into the field of Naboth. Then Jehu continued on into the city of Jezreel. Apparently Ahab's grandson Ahijah, who had come out of the city with Jehoram, tried to make his way back to his own capital, Jerusalem, but got only as far as Samaria and hid there. He was captured later and taken to Jehu near the town of Ibleam, not far from Jezreel. Jehu ordered his men to kill him in his war chariot. They wounded him mortally, on the way up to Gur, near Ibleam, but he escaped and fled to Megiddo, where he died. Then he was taken to Jerusalem and buried there. 2 Kings 9. 17-28. 2ch22. 6-9. On Jehu's arrival in Jezreel, Ahab's widow Jezebel called out, "Did it go all right with Zimri the killer of his lord?" See 1 Kings 16. 8-20. But Jehu, unmoved by this veiled threat, called upon the court officials to throw her down. They complied. Her blood spattered on the wall, and Jehu trampled her under his horses. Possibly giving a further insight into Jehu's character is the terse statement in the account, after that he came on in and ate and drank, then commanded her burial. In the meantime Jezebel had been eaten by the dogs, which circumstance brought back to Jehu's mind Elijah's prophetic expression concerning her death. 2 Kings 9. 30-37. 1 Kings 21. 23. Jehu wasted no time in pursuing the completion of his mission. He challenged the men of Samaria to set one of Ahab's 70 sons on the throne and fight. But in fear they expressed loyalty to Jehu. Jehu boldly tested their loyalty by saying, "If you belong to me, take the heads of the men that are sons of your Lord, and come to me tomorrow at this time at Jezreel." The next day messengers appeared, carrying in baskets the 70 heads, which Jehu commanded to be put in 2 heaps at the gate of Jezreel until morning. After this Jehu killed all of Ahab's distinguished men, his acquaintances, and his priests. Then he slaughtered 42 other men, the brothers of Ahab's grandson King Ahijah of Judah. Thus he destroyed also the sons of Jehoram of Judah, the husband of Textoi acute Miritra Longo. Jehu 24 account in the Book of Kings. The record reads, "Thus Jehu annihilated Baal out of Israel." 2 Kai 10. 18-28 However, later on Baal worship again gave trouble in both Israel and Judah. 2 Kai 17. 16. 2 Ch 28. 2 J 32. 29. Likely to keep the 10-tribe kingdom of Israel distinct from the kingdom of Judah with its temple of Jehovah at Jerusalem, King Jehu let the calf worship remain in Israel with its centers at Dan and Bethel. And Jehu himself did not take care to walk in the law of Jehovah the God of Israel with all his heart. He did not turn aside from the sins of Jeroboam with which he caused Israel to sin. 2 Kai 10. 29, 31. Nevertheless, for Jehu's zealous and thorough work in eradicating Baalism and in executing Jehovah's judgments on the house of Ahab, Jehovah rewarded Jehu with the promise that 4 generations of his sons would sit upon the throne of Israel. It was fulfilled in Jehu's descendants Joahaz, Jehoash, Jeroboam II, and Zechariah, whose rule ended in his assassination in about 791 BCE. The dynasty of Jehu therefore reigned over Israel for about 114 years. 2 Kai 10. 30. 13. 1, 10. 14. 23. 15. 8-12. Why was the house of Jehu held accountable by God for bloodshed, when Jehovah had commissioned Jehu as his executioner? However, after Jehu's day, by the prophet Hosea, Jehovah said, "For yet a little while, and I must hold an accounting for the acts of bloodshed of Jezreel against the house of Jehu, and I must cause the royal rule of the house of Israel to cease." Ho 1. For this blood guilt on Jehu's house could not be for his carrying out the commission to destroy the house of Ahab, for God commended him for this. Neither could it be because he destroyed Ahijah of Judah and his brothers. By their family connections, namely, the marriage of Jehoram of Judah, the son of King Jehoshaphat, to Athaliah, the daughter of Ahab and Jezebel, the royal line of Judah was contaminated with an infiltration of the wicked house of Omri. Rather, the key to the matter seems to lie in the statement that Jehu let calf worship continue in Israel and did not walk in the law of Jehovah with all his heart. Probably Jehu came to believe that independence from Judah could be maintained only through religious separation. Like other kings of Israel, he sought to secure his position by perpetuating calf worship. This was really an expression of lack of faith in Jehovah, who had made it possible for Jehu to become king. So, it may be that, apart from the proper execution of Jehovah's judgment against the house of Ahab, the wrong motivations that prompted Jehu to let calf worship remain also caused him to spill blood. The real power of the kingdom of Israel was broken when Jehu's house fell, the kingdom lasting only about 50 years longer. Only Menahem, who struck down Zechariah's murderer Shallum, had a son who succeeded him on the throne. This son, Pekahiah, was assassinated, as was his murderer and successor Pekah. Hoshea, Israel's last king, went into captivity to the king of Assyria. 2 Kai 15. 10, 13-30. 17. 4. The primary sin of Israel all along was its practice of calf worship. This led to the drawing of the nation away from Jehovah, with consequent deterioration. So the guilt for the bloodshed of Jezreel was one of the things, along with murdering, stealing, adultery, and other crimes, that really found its root in the false worship in which the rulers permitted the people to indulge. Finally God had to cause the royal rule of the house of Israel to cease. Ho 1. 4. 4. 2. Syria and Assyria harass Israel. Because of not turning fully to Jehovah and walking in his ways, Jehu had to face trouble from Hazael, the king of Syria, all the days of his otextoi acute miritra longo. Jacobziel 25 Montatus remarked that this is the first pictorial portrayal of Israelites, as far as is known. However, we cannot be absolutely sure of the truthfulness of Shalmaneser's claim. Also, the appearance of the figure in the picture cannot be relied on to be an accurate likeness of an Israelite, for these nations may have depicted their enemies as undesirable in appearance, much as drawings or pictures today portray people of an enemy nation as weak, grotesque, or hateful. 4. The son of Og of the family of Jerahmeel, a descendant of Hezron, son of Perez, who was born to Judah by Tamar. This Jehu's line came through Jarah, an Egyptian slave. Shishon, a descendant of Jerahmeel, had no sons, so he gave to Jarah his daughter as wife. The son born to them was Athai, an ancestor of Jehu. 1 Ch 2. 3-5, 25, 34-38. 5. A Simeonite, the son of Joshebia. In the days of King Hezekiah of Judah he was among the chieftains of the Simeonite families who struck down the Hamites and the Munim living in the vicinity of Dor, and who dwelt thereafter in the place of these people with their flocks. 1 Ch 4. 24, 35, 38-41. Hubbar. A leading member of the tribe of Asher. 1 Ch 7. 34, 40. Ukal Jehovah is able. Jehovah prevails, Jukal shortened form of Chuckle. A prince sent by King Zedekiah to ask Jeremiah to pray for Judah. 37. 3 This son of Shelemiah and 3 other influential princes had Jeremiah put into the miry cistern because his preaching was, as they put it, weakening the hands of the men of war, as well as the hands of the people in general. 38. 1-6. Jihad. A site in the territory of Danjos 19. 40, 45 usually identified with Elihajihad, some 13 kilometers 8 mi of Tel Aviv-Yafo. The Greek Septuagint Vatican Mizno. 1209, though, uses Azza instead of Chud. Jos 19. 45 Therefore some scholars link Chud with a Tel near Yazazza, about 6 kilometers 3.5 mi of Tel Aviv-Yafo. It is believed that this is the place called Azuru in Sennacherib's annals. Chudiji Middle-Yadaju. Of belonging to Judah. An officer of King Jehoiakim sent by the princes of Judah to bring to them Baruch with Jeremiah's scroll. When Chudi later read the same roll to Jehoiakim, the king cut it up and burned it, piece by piece, until the whole scroll was destroyed. 36. 14, 21-23, 27, 32. Chudi was a great-grandson of Cushi. 36. 14 His name and that of his ancestor are thought by some to denote that he was not a Jew by birth, but a proselyte, his great-grandfather's name suggesting that the family was from Cush, or Ethiopia. However, those of the generations in between both have typical Jewish names Nethaniah his father and Shelemiah his grandfather, and even the name Cushi itself is elsewhere found as a proper name of a natural-born Jew. Zep 1. 1 So Chudi was most likely simply a proper name given at birth and not a name first acquired as a proselyte. JLG Middle.al. 1. A descendant of Jacob's son Reuben. 1 Ch 5. 1, 7. 2. A Benjamite who, together with his family wife Machah and 10 sons, was a settler of Gibeon. An ancestor of King Saul. 1 Ch 8. 29. 9. 35-39 Apparently the same as Abiel. 1 So 9. 1. See Abiel number 1. 3. One of David's mighty men. Son of Hutham the Aroeret. 1 Ch 11. 26, 44. 4. A Levite, both a gatekeeper and a musician, who participated in the musical celebration when the ark was first brought to Jerusalem and thereafter played in front of the tent that contained it. 1 Ch 15. 17, 18, 21, 28. 16. 1, 4, 5 The second occurrence of the name in verses 5. 5. Another Levite musician who performed the same services as No. 4. 1 Ch 16. 5, The first occurrence of the name in that verse he is called Jaazeel at 1 Chronicles 15:18 and Aziel in 15:20. A Levitical descendant of Asaph and ancestor of the Levite who encouraged King Jehoshaphat and the inhabitants of Judah and Jerusalem not to otex to acute miritra longo. Jechamim 26 Jechamim Jek middle dot a middle dot Miam made the people rise up. The fourth son of Hebron, a Kohathite Levite, and founder of a Levitical paternal house that survived at least until David's reign. 1 Ch 23. 12, 19. 24. 23, 30b, 31. Jekhamu Jek middle dot a middle dot Miaja has raised up. 1. The descendant of Judah and son of Shalom. 1 Ch 2. 3, 41. 2. One of the sons born to King Jehoiachin and Jeconiah during his Babylonian exile. 1 Ch 3. 17, 18. Jekathiel G middle dot Kuthai middle dot L. The descendant of Judah and father of Zanoah. 1 Ch 4. 1, 18 Zanoah is the name of a city rather than a person in its other occurrence Jos 15. 56, 57, so Jekathiel as its father was likely the father of those who settled there, or was himself its founder or chief settler. Jemima G middle dot Mima. The first of Job's 3 daughters born after his great test. Jemima and her sisters, the most beautiful women in all the land, received an inheritance in among their 7 brothers. Job 42. 13-15. Jemuel Gem middle dot Ul possibly, day of God. The first named son of Simeon and one of the 70 numbered among Jacob's household who came into Egypt. Ge 46. 10, 27. X 6. 15 in other accounts he is called Nemuel. New 26. 12. 1 Ch 4. 24. Jephthah may God open. God has opened. A judge of Israel, of the tribe of Manasseh. New 26. 29. JG 11. 1 He administered justice over the territory of Gilead for 6 years perhaps during the priesthood of Eli and the early life of Samuel. JG 12. 7 Jephthah's reference to 300 years of Israelite control of the Jordan would seem to place the start of his 6-year judgeship around 1173 BCE JG 11. 26. Jephthah a legitimate son. The mother of Jephthah was a prostitute woman, not meaning, however, that Jephthah was born of prostitution or was illegitimate. His mother had been a prostitute prior to her marriage as a secondary wife to Gilead, just as Rahab had once been a prostitute, but later married Salmon. JG 11. 1. Jos 2. 1. Mount 1. 5 That Jephthah was not illegitimate is proved by the fact that his half-brothers by Gilead's primary wife drove him out so that he would not share in the inheritance. JG 11. 2 Additionally, Jephthah later became the accepted leader of the men of Gilead of whom Jephthah's half-brothers seemed to be foremost. JG 11. 11 Moreover, he offered a sacrifice to God at the tabernacle. JG 11. 30, 31 None of these things would have been possible for an illegitimate son, for the law specifically stated, no illegitimate son may come into the congregation of Jehovah. Even to the 10th generation none of his may come into the congregation of Jehovah. De 23. 2. Jephthah was evidently the firstborn of Gilead. Consequently he would normally have inherited 2 portions in the property of his father Gilead, who apparently was dead at the time Jephthah's half-brothers drove him out and would also have been the head of the family. Only by illegally driving him away could Jephthah's half-brothers deprive him of his rightful inheritance, for even though the firstborn son of a father was the son of a secondary wife, or even a less favored wife, he was, nevertheless, to receive the firstborn's rights. De 21. 15-17. Idle men gathered to Jephthah. When Jephthah was driven away by his half-brothers he took up dwelling in the land of Tob, a region of Gilead, apparently outside the borders of Israel. Here Jephthah would be on the frontier, exposed to Israel's foreign enemies, particularly Ammon. Idle men, that is, men evidently made idle or put out of employment by Ammonite harassment, and revolting against servitude to Ammon, came to Jephthah and put themselves under his command. JG 11. 3. The people living in the territory of the Jordan River, the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and half of Manasseh, were mainly cattle raisers, and the forays of the Ammonite raiders who even crossed the Jordan at times had apparently taken away the possessions and the means of livelihood. O text to acute miritra longo. Jephthah 27. They saw the need for proper leadership and direction. JG 10. 18. They realized that they must be under the headship of a God-appointed man if they were to defeat Ammon. JG 11. 5, 6, 10. Undoubtedly Jephthah and his men had been performing exploits in Tob, suggesting that he was God's designated choice. JG 11. 1. The men of Gilead decided to go to Jephthah, whom they had despised, to ask him to be their head. Jephthah becomes head of Gilead. Jephthah agreed to lead them in the fight against Ammon on one condition. If Jehovah gave him victory, he would continue as head after returning from the fight. His insistence on it was not a selfish demand. He had shown himself concerned with the fight in behalf of God's name and his people. Now, if he defeated Ammon, it would prove that God was with him. Jephthah wanted to make sure that God's rule would not be forsaken again once the crisis had passed. Also, if he was indeed Gilead's firstborn son, he was only establishing his legal right as head of the house of Gilead. The covenant was then concluded before Jehovah in Mizpah. Here again Jephthah showed that he looked to Jehovah as Israel's God and King, and their real deliverer. JG 11. 8-11. Jephthah, a man of action, lost no time in exercising vigorous leadership. He sent a message to the king of Ammon, pointing out that Ammon was the aggressor in invading Israel's land. The king replied that it was land Israel had taken from Ammon. JG 11. 12, 13. Here Jephthah showed himself to be not a mere rough, uncultured warrior, but a student of history and particularly of God's dealings with his people. He refuted the Ammonite argument, showing that one Israel did not molest Ammon, Moab, or Edom. JG 11. 14-18. The 2. 9, 19, 37. 2ch 20. 10, 11. 2. Ammon had not possessed the disputed land at the time of the Israelite conquest, because it was in the hands of the Canaanite Amorites, and God had given their king, Sihon, and his land into Israel's hand. 3. Ammon had not disputed Israel's occupation for the past 300 years. Therefore, on what valid basis could they do so now? JG 11. 19-27. Jephthah got at the heart of the matter when he showed that the issue revolved around the matter of worship. He declared that Jehovah God had given Israel the land, and that for this reason they would not give an inch of it to worshippers of a false god. He called Chemosh the god of Ammon. Some have thought this to be an error. But, although Ammon had the god Milcom, and though Chemosh was a god of Moab, those related nations worshipped many gods. Solomon even wrongly brought the worship of Chemosh into Israel, because of his foreign wives. JG 11. 24. 1k 11. 1, 7, 8, 33. 2k 23. 13. Furthermore, Chemosh may mean subduer, conqueror, according to some scholars. See Gesenius's Hebrew and Chaldee Lexicon, translated by S. Tregels, 1901, p. 401. Jephthah may have called attention to this god as being given credit by the Ammonites for subduing or conquering others and giving them land. Jephthah's vow. Jephthah now saw that a fight with Ammon was God's will. With God's spirit energizing him, he led his army to the fight. Similar to Jacob's action some 600 years previously, Jephthah made a vow, demonstrating his wholehearted desire for Jehovah's direction and attributing any success he would have to Jehovah. JG 11. 30, 31. GE 28. 20-22. Jehovah heard his vow with favor, and the Ammonites were subdued. JG 11. 32, 33. Did Jephthah have in mind human sacrifice when he vowed to present as a burnt offering the first one coming out of his house? Some critics and scholars have condemned Jephthah for his vow, having the view that Jephthah followed the practice of other nations. O text to acute miritra longo. Jephthah 28 mind that Jehovah's spirit was on Jephthah at the time. This would prevent any rash vow on Jephthah's part. How, then, would the person coming out to meet Jephthah to congratulate him on his victory become Jehovah's and be offered up as a burnt offering. JG 11. 31. Persons could be devoted to Jehovah's exclusive service in connection with the sanctuary. It was a right that parents could exercise. Samuel was one such person, promised to tabernacle service by vow of his mother Hannah before his birth. This vow was approved by her husband Elkanah. As soon as Samuel was weaned, Hannah offered him at the sanctuary. Along with him, Hannah brought an animal sacrifice. Once a 1. 11, 22-28. 2. 11 Samson was another child especially devoted to God's service as a Nazirit. JG 13. 2-5, 11-14. Compare the father's authority over a daughter as outlined in New 30. 3-5, 16. When Jephthah brought his daughter to the sanctuary, which was in Shiloh at that time, he undoubtedly accompanied his presentation of her with an animal burnt offering. According to the law, a burnt offering was slaughtered, skinned, and cut up. The intestines and shakes were washed, and its body, head and all, was burned on the altar. The 1. 3-9 The wholeness of such offering represented full, unqualified, wholehearted dedication to Jehovah, and when it accompanied another offering as, for example, when the burnt offering followed the sin offering on the Day of Atonement, it constituted an appeal to Jehovah to accept that other offering. The 16. 3, 5, 6, 11, 15, 24. It was a real sacrifice on the part of both Jephthah and his daughter, for he had no other child. JG 11. 34 Therefore no descendant of his would carry on his name and his inheritance in Israel. Jephthah's daughter was his only hope for this. She wept, not over her death, but over her virginity, for it was the desire of every Israelite man and woman to have children and to keep the family name and inheritance alive. JG 11. 37, 38 Barrenness was a calamity. But Jephthah's daughter never had relations with a man. Had these words applied only to the time prior to the carrying out of the vow, they would have been superfluous, for she is specifically said to have been a virgin. That the statement has reference to the fulfilling of the vow is shown in that it follows the expression, he carried out his vow that he had made toward her. Actually, the record is pointing out that also after the vow was carried out she maintained her virginity. JG 11. 39. Compare enderings in KJ. Die. Ig. NW. Moreover, Jephthah's daughter was visited from year to year by her companions to give her commendation. JG 11. 40 The Hebrew word Tana, used here, also occurs at Judges 5. 11, and in that text is variously rendered recount NW, rehearse KJ, recounted at, repeat RS. The word is defined in a Hebrew and Chaldee lexicon edited by B. Davis, 1957, p. 693 as to repeat, to rehearse. At Judges 11. 40 The King James Version renders the term lament, but the margin reads talk with. As Jephthah's daughter served at the sanctuary, doubtless like other Nethinim given ones devoted to sanctuary service, there was much she could do. These persons served in gathering wood, drawing water, doing repair work, and undoubtedly performing many other tasks as assistants to the priests and Levites there. Jos 9. 21, 23, 27. Es 7. 24. 8. 20. Eni 3. 26. Ephraimites resist Jephthah? The Ephraimites, who considered themselves the dominant tribe of northern Israel including Gilead, proudly refused to acknowledge Jephthah and sought to justify themselves. So they worked up a false charge as an excuse for taking offense against him. A like attitude had been shown by them years before, in Judge Gideon's time. JG 8. 1 They claimed that Jephthah failed to call them to the fight against Ammon, and they threatened to burn Jephthah's house over him. JGO textoi acute miritra longo, Job 29 libera, and at Hebrews 11. 32 He is listed among the faithful cloud of witnesses. Hope 12. 1. Jephaneji middle.funnow. 1. Father of the Judean spy Caleb and, likely, the father of Kenaz. New 13. 2, 3, 6. 1 ch 4. 15. JG 1. 13 Jephunneh was a Kenizzite associated with the tribe of Judah. Jos 14. 6, 14. 2. A prominent member of the tribe of Asher. 1 ch 7. 38, 40. Jeraji Ra lunar month. A son of Joktan whose descendants may have settled somewhere in S Arabia. GE 10. 26-29. 1 ch 1. 20. C. Joktan. Dramil G middle dot Rami middle dot L. May God show mercy. God has shown mercy. 1. The firstborn of Judah's grandson Hezron. The royal and messianic lineage passed through Dramil's brother Ram, apparently the same as Ani. An extensive genealogy is included for Dramil's descendants, some of whom inhabited the southern part of Judah. 1 ch 2. 4, 5, 9-15, 25-42. 1 ch 27. 10. Lu 3. 33. 2. Son or descendant of a Merarite Levite named Kish. 1 ch 24. 26, 29. 23. 21. 3. One of the 3 men sent by King Jehoiakim in his 5th year to seize Jeremiah and Baruch. They returned empty-handed, however, for Jehovah kept his faithful servants concealed. J 36. 9, 26. Since Jehoiakim's successor and presumed firstborn Jehoiachin was only about 12 years old during his father's 5th year of rule, other sons of Jehoiakim were likely still younger, too young to be sent on such a mission as Dramil's. 2 Chi 23. 36. 24. 6, 8 Therefore, Dramil's being called the son of the king might mean, not that he was an offspring of the king, but that he was a member of the royal household or an official of royal descent. Of interest is the discovery of a seal impression, said to be from the 7th century BCE that reads, belonging to Dramil the king's son. Israel Exploration Journal, Jerusalem, 1978, Volume 28, p. 53. Dramilites G middle dot Rami middle dot L middle dot ites of belonging to Dramil. The descendants of Judah through Dramil son of Hezron. 1 ch 2. 4, 9, 25-27, 33, 42 The Dramilites live in the southern part of Judah, apparently in the same general region as the Amalekites, Jeshurites, and Gerzites whom David raided while residing among the Philistines as a fugitive from King Saul. When returning from such raids, David would ambiguously report that these raids had been made upon the south of Judah and upon the south of the Dramilites and upon the south of the Kenites. Philistine King Achish, therefore, assumed that David had raided Israelites, thus making himself a stench to his countrymen and enhancing his value to Achish. 1 ch 27. 7-12 In reality, David later shared spoils of war with the older men in the cities of the Dramilites. 1 ch 30. 26, 29. Joboaheb. Akmiddle.bar. The Hebrew word akmiddle.bar, variously rendered mouse, rat, Joboah, and jumping rodent, is understood by many scholars as possibly embracing all varieties of rats, mice, and related animals such as the Joboah. However, the Hebrew and Aramaic lexicon by Kula and Baumgartner gives the meaning of the Hebrew term as Joboah. The Joboah is a jumping rodent that somewhat resembles a miniature kangaroo and is still encountered in the arid parts of the Middle East. The desert Joboah jaculus has a body length of from 10 to 15 centimeters 4-6 inches and weighs 50 to 70 grams 1.8-2. 5 Oz. Their ears and eyes are large. The Joboah resembles a miniature kangaroo. Jid 30 The front limbs are short, but the 2 hind limbs measure about 2/3 of the total head and body length. The tail is the longest part of the animal and terminates in a small brush. This nocturnal animal prefers desert lands, spending the hot day in its underground burrow, but venturing forth during the cooler night to procure food. Although the Arabs inhabiting the Syrian desert used the Joboah for food, it was legally unclean to the Israelites. 11. 29 But it seems that apostate Israelites ignored this prohibition of the law. Issa 66. 17. FTN. Jerboa was a destructive to grain and other crops. During the time the sacred ark was in the territory of the Philistines, the divinely sent plague of Jerboas brought the land to ruin. 1 6. 4, 5, 11, 18. Jediread. A descendant of Judah and father of Dor, or of those who settled the town of Dor. 1 Ch 4. 1, 18. See Shroud Beth Joab. Jeremiah Dre middle. My shortened form of Jemath.